Picture this. Two guys talking about true crime,
Weird mysteries.
horror stories,
But the conversation is light.
and mostly funny.
and sometimes naughty.
This is
A
Scriptsalog.
Spotify exclusive.
I'm Gideon.
And I'm Glenn, and we're serving huge portions of horror and true crime twice a week.
We'll make sure your cravings are satisfied.
And you'll be begging for more.
Char.
Check us out.
This is Scriptsalog, available exclusively on Spotify.
Hey, if you're looking for some wrestling content here on Spotify, you can check out the MTG Show Podcast, a wrestling podcast only here on Spotify. Welcome to your unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast. This is the MTG Show Podcast. It's Friday, and you know what that means. Welcome to your unfiltered Tagalog Wrestling Podcast. And this is the MTG Show Podcast, a wrestling podcast by Bong Collective. Jesus. You heard that right. The MTG Show Podcast is now part of Bong Collective's roster. So, we're Bong Collective now. If you don't know Bong Collective, andyan sa Bong Collective yun. There's a lot of shows na pwede nyo mapakinggan right now on Bong Collective. If you don't know us, marami kami. We are 50 shows. Andun din yung pinag-aaperan ko na This Drunked Midnights na minsan ay gumagawa ng wrestling content. If you want to listen on TDM, definitely marami kayong pwede mapakinggan. Sa Spotify din naman yung mga episodes ng This Drunked Midnights. If you want to listen, then give us a listen on This Drunked Midnights. Andun din yung aking producer. Gusto ko mag-shoutout kay Yuki ng The Kingdom Podcast. If you want K-pop podcast on Bong Collective, you can listen to The Kingdom Podcast because ito yung counterpart ko. Ito yung counterpart ko when it comes to K-pop. So if you want to listen on his podcast, pwede na kayong makinig here on Spotify after ng podcast na. Alright? So, balik tayo sa wrestling kasi hindi naman to K-pop podcast. Hindi to Kingdom Podcast para mag-rant ako about K-pop here. Okay. So, ayun. Before we start this episode, I want to thank everyone and Bong Collective for welcoming me on their network. And that was a stupendous way to welcome me to Bong Collective. And like what I said, nag-debut ako sa Bong Collective in a really, really good way. I love that. Mag-shoutout muna ako kay BP, kay Yuki, kay Kiniki. I think nakikinig din to sa podcast ko. And the rest of Bong Collective sa wala sa awa na pag-suporta sa akin. And I want to appreciate Yuki's tweet on that day na one of the most consistent guys in the podcast scene. I'm not that consistent, dude. Sadyang weekly lang talaga ang wrestling. Kaya kaya active tayo dito. That's why we're doing great here. Alright? We are Bong Collective. Just chill our asses out. Alright? By the way, I want to thank Bong Collective once again for this wonderful opportunity na maging part ng roster na to. Bigger and better roster of Bong Collective. I am the first sports podcast, by the way, of Bong Collective. If hindi nyo alam. And definitely the last kasi they don't get sports now. It's kind of weird. But still, what a great pick. What a great opportunity to join the roster of Bonk So, yeah. We're going to discuss something later na medyo related sa bunk. Probably some changes is going to start probably by next week. So, antabayan niyo tong end of the episode. I'm going to down something na. No? Alright. So, for this week's podcast, obviously, bago man nangyari tong bunk surprises, and sabi ko, magre-review tayo ng Rebellion ngayon. And, ayun. Basically, we're going to do Rebellion review. And then, obviously, yung kung naman nangyari sa wrestling ngayon. And yung Stupendous Dynamite earlier. And yung NXT na may magandang hatak sa akin, which is great. Okay, so before we formally start this podcast, gusto ko sabihin na salamat sa lahat ng nakikinig ng episodes ko sa podcast since episode 1 until the episode 100. As we entered the episode 101, I wish all you guys na makinig kayo sa akin. Of course, please pakirate din ng podcast ko on Spotify. Baka naman, i-rate nyo naman yung podcast ko on Spotify, 5 stars, 6 in Japan. Kasi nakikita ko na yung numbers doon. Baka lang naman. Okay. Hindi tayo papatagal. Let's start with Rebellion here. And since Rebellion was a really good pay-per-view earlier, na I wish na sana ay napapanood ng lahat. Hindi lang ng fans ng Impact, kundi ng lahat ng wrestling fans worldwide. Alright. Impact was great last Sunday. So let's start with the major change here. Let's talk about Josh Alexander beating Moose for the Impact World Championship. Okay. So the match itself was impressive, alright? I don't want to say negatives here kasi I don't think dapat akong sabihin na negative kasi this is not AEW, this is not WWE who wants negative bullshit on their bookings. This is Impact, definitely better when it comes to bookings. And just like that, Impact did a really good job on Rebellion. Despite wala nang AEW, wala nang New Japan, meron pa rin nag-appear na isa. We're going to discuss that in a bit. But, Impact did a really good job on Rebellion despite of the comparison last year. Na sabihin nyo nga, ngayon nyo sabihin na maganda lang Impact kasi may kasamang company like AEW. Ngayon nyo sabihin sa akin o sa mga nagpo-podcast dito na maganda lang ang Impact kasi may AEW. Maganda lang ang Impact kasi may WWE. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. If you're going to say that, then get the fuck out of here. Bumalik ka na lang sa AEW mo o sa WWE mo. Man, this is an alternative universe to us. Sa mga nanonood ng wrestling in general. Impact was a general alternative before, di ba? And definitely a general alternative to us right now. Let's go back to the match itself. I love the fact that Josh A wins the match despite na opposite yung naging prediction ko. Regardless on that, I love this outcome na makukuha ni Josh yung kanyang redemption from that 6 months na hostage ni Moose. That was great, man. That's impressive. That title reign from Moose was impressive, by the way. And I know, all of us knowing na hindi naman magkatagal talaga yung title reign na yun. But, let me say this at least, na sobrang impressed ako on Moose's title reign. Plus, since we're getting new eras now here in Impact, and Josh definitely leading the charge now to Impact Wrestling. And props din syempre sa lahat na nagbubuk for Impact. And yeah, I love the match. I love this match, Josh versus Moose. And the only thing that I don't like about this match is parang like what I said, parang nabitin ako dito. Kung yung isang match na mamaya pag-uusapan natin kumain dito, mas malaking kain kumpara dito sa match na to, Josh versus Moose. I think mas maganda pang kalalabasan dito. Ang naisip ko minsan, bakit hindi kayo nag-overtime mga Impact events? kahit itong mga pay-per-view, something like that. Di sila nag-overtime, di sila nag-exceed for 3 hours. Ang weird. Parang, parang nasanay na ako na sumusobra sila. But here, no. Okay, regardless, I love the title change here. And we're going to talk about more title changes in a bit. So let's start with most whelming match of Rebellion. So it's Tasha Steelz versus Rosemary for the Impact Knockouts World Championship. No offense to Tasha, but I don't like the build here. I know I love Tasha. All right? I love Tasha Steelz. But the problem here with the build of Tasha, at aside din sa match na to, it's kinda odd to me na nasasapawan ng Reina de Reina Styro yung feud na to. I don't like the fact na mas maganda pa yung Reina de Reina Styro, which is I'm going to discuss next, obviously. Kasi medyo mas nag-overpower sa akin yung Reina Diona. Parang naisip ko nga, akala ko si Diona yung Knockouts champion. Pero nagkakamali ako. And ang weird. Ang weird pa na ako rin eh. Na mas maganda pa yung match from AAA title rather than this. I hate to say this to you guys who watches Impact on Facebook or YouTube, whatever. I hate to say this, but the title run of Diona or this match in general with Diona is easily better than that title match. It looks funny to us, but to you guys who watches wrestling na mag-iisip din na syempre, why this title match overlapped the Knockouts title, which is their own title. Diba? So, questionin mo syempre na, so why they're doing this? Both titles at pay-per-view. Diba? No offense to Tasha Steelz. I love Tasha Steelz. But, here's the problem. So, sobrang stuck ng Rebellion. There's always a problem na pagka sumasapaw yung isang match, lalo't hindi mo company belt yun. It's kind of funny. It's kind of funny na, hindi namin pwede to i-champion. Hindi naman siya worth it para maging champion. Alam mo, kabutahan to, mas okay pa yung ibang champions rather than this. Di ba ang bullshit? Come on, man. Back, you know what's up, alright? You know, you can do better on that, right? Come on. Alam ko may improvements pa. Maybe there's an improvement for Diona. I know there's improvement for Tasha. But definitely no disrespect to Tasha. But kung pagandahan ng title reigns, since ilang araw pa lang naman yung kay Tasha, and ilang araw pa lang din yung kay Diona, I'm gonna go with Diona all day. And I love the title reigns, especially with the two title reigns. I love that. Come on. Alright? And ang problema kung saan, meron 2 titles on the same day, on the same pay-per-view, we're getting those scraps. Diba? Just go. We're getting logics here. And I kinda hate na Tasha was overlapped by non-Impact champion, which is funny at all. And hindi natin alam kung ano yung magiging numbers about Tasha Steelz. Maybe big accomplishment siya for some. Kasi she defeated Mickie James, she defeated her in a rematch. That's impressive for me. But yung ma-overlap ka with Diona? Come on, people. That's embarrassing. Come on. That's embarrassing at all. But regardless, I love the title reign. But there's a problem. If you're going to overlap 2 champions, inulit ko lang, in English ko lang para mas maintindihan nyo. If 2 different champions but women's champions overlapping one pay-per-view, there's something na may mali. There's something wrong with it. Diba? Example, si Thunder Rosa in this case, going to AEW, going to Impact in this case, as champion. And ma-overshadow nyo na naman si Thunder o si Tasha. Diba it's embarrassing? Naiya ako doon? Oh, may hiya ako doon. Definitely. And it's funny. Diba? So, alam nyo, ang remedyo ko lang dyan sa mga ganitong problema. Kung ayaw nyo ng ganitong, sapang-sapang moment na to, ang remedyo dyan, kung example, no choice, ayaw sa'yo ng tao, o hindi ka nire-respect as champion, your title run was great, your matches are great, but there's a problem with it na, for example, hindi ka ma-recognize kasi there's another champion that they think they're better. Alright? That's a problem with Impact right now. Okay, so by the way, I love the Knockouts title match. I could say it's underwhelming. Kasi sampal sa akin na sinapawan to ng knockouts o ng Rated Arenas title, which is we're going to discuss right now. But by the way, that may add na I love this thing. I love Tasha on its own. But the problem is when Diona steps to the ring, nagmumukha siyang mas champion eh. Diba? Mas magmumukha siyang top champion rather than Tasha. And props to Impact as well. Siyempre positive to. Props to Impact na they did a really good job putting the respect back to the Impact World Women's Championship or the Knockouts Women's Championship. That's the plus for me since they did Becky James title run, yung naging Royal Rumble participant siya. That's great. Diba? Oh, that's great. Okay, so let's move on to Taya Valkyrie beating Diona for the Rated Arenas Championship of AAA. Alam nyo, kung negative lahat halos na nasabi ko about Diona o about Tasha on this very podcast, I apologize. But here, man, woohoo! After 2 years of Taya staying in Stanford, aka WWE, we know what's the problem of WWE. Definitely, we know what's problem. And we know what's up on that promotion, alright? We know what's happening, alright? But the problem here is pag nag-overlap o nag-overshadow yung promotion mo and hindi ka na magamit, there's a problem with it. Kakakuha nyo yan ng mga talents eh. Kakakuha nyo yan kung saan saang promotions eh. Diba? And that's the case of Taya na hindi na nga naging champion sa WWE. Pero naging champion sa AAA because she's great. Plus, dagdag mo pa na alaga siya ng AAA. It's kinda funny. Okay, let's go back to the match. Kung itong kay Tasha and kay Rosemary, I criticized it a lot. But here, yung alam mo, itong match na to, I'm not doing favoritism here. But I think this is the clear winner when it comes to better matches on women's side on pay-per-view. I think this Diona Taya match did great, a lot of great job. Alright. And I think then na like what I said earlier na parang I can say na Diona is the champion of Impact. Not because of Taya or not because of Diona holding the 2 titles na one ulit. Pero parang mas magmumukha siyang top champion rather than Tasha eh. Diba? That's kind of funny. That's kind of sad. But going back to the match, we know the history between Diona and Taya, right? Hindi naman nawala totally si Taya. Nagpalit lang siya ng pangalan, nagpalit ng persona, and the hatred is still there. The history is still there. The match was fantastic. I don't want to say it's best or worst, but I think they did a really good job on beating each other up. And I think that's stupendous. I think that's great. regardless on the outcome. And I'm glad that Taya won the title, and I'm glad na na-appreciate ng ibang companies yung importance ni Taya when it comes to championships. And I'm really glad na they gave her the AAA belt kasi all of us are bored with Diona's shit, alright? Let's be real here, alright? Tama ba? Okay, let's move on. So, Slammiversary was announced for June 19, 20 here in the Philippines. So, we're getting back-to-back pay-per-views on June. So, it's Rebellion, Slammiversary on June 20 and June 27, of course, it's yung Forbidden Door, yung New Japan and AEW show. Which is where we're going to discuss that soon. So, the fun fact here, the date of Slammiversary this year was the date where the Impact was born, right? Okay lang pinanganak ang Impact. So, that's a big history day for Impact Wrestling. Don't miss this shit. If napanood mo yung wrestling in 202, I think this pay-per-view is not a mess for you guys. Watch this pay-per-view, people. Alright? Wait lang. Ayun, going back. I did a peace break right there. Okay, so going back to the Slammiversary, I think the history was there, alright? If gusto niyo mag-history book, history lesson about Impact Wrestling, you can do that. If magjo-join kayo sa nila, I think the whole library of Impact is there on their YouTube channel. If gusto niyo panoorin via tawag dito, yung nila, Insiders, that's 130 a month on YouTube. You can pay that as soon as possible. And there's 30 days. You can watch Slammiversary, you can watch Rebellion, you can watch every pay-per-view of Impact before. And that's a great deal, to be honest. Okay, so iba pang mga matches on Impact Rebellion. So, we got Violent by Design retaining the tag titles versus 7 other teams. Okay, we're going to recap everything what happened on that 7 teams. So, first, Major Players versus Jordan Grace and W. Morrissey. Major Players beats Grace and Morrissey, and then Siggy Dice and Johnny Swinger versus Major Players, and obviously Major Players wins again. And then yon, Good Brothers. So lumabas ang I think it's good Brothers, I think. Ayan, so Willie Mack and Rich Swann, they eliminated Major Players, and then yon, Good Brothers, they did 3 eliminations here in this match, and then Honor No More, and finally Hits Later and Rhino. And Violent by Design eliminated Hit and Rhino to win the gauntlet. Basically, elimination gauntlet, whatever. Kung naman yung term nyo dito. So, they retained the tag titles, and then Tomohiro Ishii versus Jonah. I think I love this pay-per-view a lot. Few matches of this card, I love this match. Sa lahat ng matches sa Rebellion, aside from the X Division, this is a must-watch. Yung kay Ishii and kay Jonah. That's a really good match. And then, alright, so may nirelease na big net na minimension EGV. It's obviously Sami Callihan. So, it's obviously Sami Callihan na maybe malalaman natin on the tapings really soon. And then Ace Austin beating Trey Miguel and Mike Bailey for the X Division title. I thought na Mike Bailey would win the title, but we got a swerve. And regardless, I love Ace Austin. So that's a win-win. That's a win-win for me in my case. Alright? That's a win-win. Ewan ko sa mga nanonood dito ng kung anong planeta yung pinapanood nyo. But regardless, that's a win-win. Okay. Then, so Steve Backlund defeated Jay White and I think it's Chris Sabin. Alright? So that's a really good match as well. I love this match in general, but I don't think it's my thing eh. Mas pinagtuunan ko yung mga tarong matches plus the Ishii match. And yan. And then finally, ayun, yun lang basically. And then we're going to talk about the inspiration statement earlier na they temporarily left professional wrestling and they quit Impact temporarily kasi they want to focus on new things. According to some sources right there on whenever we find sources, alright. So, according to them, ang reason is si Cassie Lee baka mag-explore ng bagong opportunities aside from wrestling, and si Jessie McKay hindi natin alam kung bakit. Okay, but regardless, I wish them all the best and see you around. Maybe movies, maybe modeling tapings, things that we maybe discuss soon. Definitely soon. Maybe, di ba? But, ayun. Alright. Then, okay, let's do the verdict of Impact Rebellion. If you're going to ask me, ano yung i-recommend ko match from Rebellion? So, obviously, 2022-2021 pay-per-view, it's 2022 over 2021, definitely. And if tatanungin niyo ako what's my top 3 matches of Rebellion, I'm going to do this movie forward. The top 3 things. So, the top 3 Rebellion matches is of course, the World Title. Must watch to. Kasi if casual ka ng Impact, this is definitely one of the biggest stories and obviously one of my favorite stops of Impact right now. Obviously, number 2 is yung panalo ni Taya Valkyrie. That's a must watch. And of course, yung dagdag natin yung Ishii versus Jonah. Dagdag natin doon. And finally, yung X Division title. Obviously, if you want to watch this shit pay-per-view, watch the whole shit. Like, whole pay-per-view. That's a 3 hours. Mas mahaba pa yun sa Raw. Alright? And hindi masasayang yung 3 hours mo. I swear to God. And regardless, if choice mo naman, if you don't want, if ayaw nyo manood, wala akong magagawa. It's not my fault either. Okay, so let's do the verdict for Impact Rebellion. So, where's my notes? Okay, so Impact Rebellion ratings. So, the triple threat, Jay White, Chris Sabin, Steve Macklin match, 3 out of 5. And then the Reina de Reinas title is 4 out of 5. X Division title, 4 over 5. The Jonah Ishii, 3.5. The tag titles and the knockouts is 2. The world title is 5 over 5. Okay? Yun lang ang ratings ko for Impact Rebellion. So before we go to our first commercial break, let's talk about Lazada. Parating na yung susunod na sale ng Lazada. If you want to support the podcast on your shopping on Lazada, please use my link on the description below, podlink.co/6gs. Again, that's podlink.co/6gs. There's gonna be a long, big run, lalo na malapit na ang kanilang 5/5 sale. It's going to happen really, really soon. And if you want to support the podcast, please use my link on the description. Or maybe yung aking linktr.ee/THEMTGSHOWPODCAST. Makikita nyo rin doon yung Lazada link ko. Diretso na lang yan sa app. And then check out. And pag dumating na yung order, it's gonna be a big help for me for the podcast without no extra cost to you. So, we're going to take our first commercial break. Let's check out our bunkmates here on Bunk Collective.
So Mars, what na? Do you want to talk about everything and anything under the sun? Listen to our fellow Pinoy stories or just catch up? Big kwento?
Why not? Here at Mars What Na podcast, everything is free-flowing, like the alcohol that we may or may not be drinking.
You've got your Kumars Michelle and
Bethany, here finding what makes us distinctly Pinoy, our similarities, our differences.
covering the topics about Pinoy experience from the motherland and abroad.
Catch us on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Kita Kits!
Hey everyone, my name is Greg.
I'm McCoy.
And I'm D. We're from
Chat. We're three Filipino-American gay guys discussing topics about culture, LGBTQ identity, politics, even love.
Or the lack thereof.
Here we go again.
Okay. We also cover family dramas and everything your tita baby and uncle boy don't want to talk about.
You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Okay. Hello, Mike Tess. Hello. Okay. So, we're back on the podcast. Katatapos lang ng ating Impact Rebellion review. And in case you missed Rebellion, we can watch it on pay-per-view. You can watch it on YouTube. You can watch it on Fight TV. Kung saan man kayo nanonood ng pay-per-views right now. Okay. And also, Sony 10 2 or Sony X, Sony 6. I watched it on Sony 6. So, it's convenient. Kasi India loves wrestling, and Impact definitely is one of the hosts and one of the broadcast deals ng Sony Sports Network. So, thank you. Okay. So, before we continue on the podcast, let's talk about Shopee. Malapit na rin ang 5/5 sale ng Shopee. If you want to support the podcast on Shopee, especially on your 5/5 shopping, please use my link on the description below, podlink.co/BHX. Again, that's podlink.co/BHX. Malaking tulong yan here on the podcast without no extra cost to you. Especially with people na nag-shopping on Shopee, definitely a big must for them or us here on the podcast. So, yeah. Malaking tulong yan sa akin. Trust me. Okay, so let's talk about Raw and SmackDown. It's gonna be a pulverized stuff here. Okay, so let's talk about Randy Orton last. Kasi important yun. First, let's talk about the Bianca Belair Sonya Deville matchup on Raw. Come on, people. We need to talk about this. Seriously, we need to talk about this. This is embarrassing, man. Regardless, this is just any kind of cheap hometown crap of WWE doing their shit. And Bianca Belair is just a victim of it. And Sonya being the challenger is fine for me. But it's kind of lacking something. Medyo may kulang sa akin na possible magkakaroon naman ng rematch. So yeah, maybe. Okay. So next is the Lashley Omos arm wrestling match. So let's talk about this. I love this new pairing of Omos and MVP. And that's definitely a plus one. Kasi Omos definitely needs a mouthpiece in MVP. So definitely that's a plus. Eh, hindi naman kailangan ni Lash ng mouthpiece eh. Parang plus one lang si Lash with the mouthpiece, di ba? Plus one lang siya eh. In the end of it eh. Di ba? Then, so, dagdag natin yung Asuka just made her return. She confronted Becky Lynch in a segment na parang sinabi niya na she never defeated Asuka, and then yung piningot nga sa ilong ni Asuka si Becky. So, it's kind of funny. Then, so also on NXT then as well. NXT on Raw as well. Mustafa Ali just made his return after a few months of speculations na alis na ba siya or no. Kung i-release ba siya or no. The answer is no. So, he returned as a babyface. It's kind of weird, but yeah, this is much better than his Retribution run. So, yeah, it's kind of funny. Then, we got the main event here. So, it's RK Bro, Cody Rhodes, Ezekiel, and the Usos. Yan nga, silang apat versus the Usos, Seth Rollins, and Kevin Owens. That's a fun match. Tributing Randy Orton, obviously. So, I love this episode na basically umikot kay Orton. So, it's kinda great touch. For me, we're going to discuss Randy Orton in our last part of the episode. Then, so, dagdag pa natin yung SmackDown. So, we got Butch. We got the endless memes of Butch, especially with the Coachella thing. I love the Coachella thing of Butch. Come on, Bifo. Sino man yun nakaisip ng concept na yun? He deserves the race here. Come on. Kasi naman nakaisip nun, definitely he deserves a race, man. Not because of, I was thinking K-pop here since 21 and yes pa, just made their debuts on on Coachella, obviously. But it's kind of funny na they are using Butch for that reasoning. But I'm still hoping na bumalik si Butch as Pit Dan. Sana temporary lang to. Yeah. Sana temporary lang to. Sorry for that. Wait, I'm going to paste my shit. Come on. I think this is better. Okay, let's continue. I think this is better. Alright? Let me know in the podcast platforms kung mas maganda ba ang hawak ko yung mic kaysa yung kung starting with this segment of the pod. I think I'm better with holding my mic, alright? It's kind of weird. Di ako sanay. Okay, so let's talk about Butch pa. I love the presentation of Butch. They explained a lot. May mga history kasi sa WWE that they don't really explain the name changes or something like that. Di nila ganang ina-explain, but I'm glad they explained it here. And yung mga ibang name changes sa NXT that we're going to talk about that in a bit. Then, so let's talk about ano pa, yung kay Natalia and Shayna Baszler. So they're next for the SmackDown tags or the women's tag titles na sobrang forgettable na for me. Wala na akong ideya kasi hindi may mga gig challengers. Because the title division in general, especially in women, sucked. I don't care. Then, Riddle versus Jey Uso from last week's SmackDown. That's impressive, by the way. Then, finally, the Drew McIntyre versus Sami Zayn. Man, this is definitely one of the best examples of WWE matches or feuds na kaya kong pagsawaan agad. Okay, before we continue on NXT, so let's talk about Randy Orton. 20 years of Randy Orton. That was, sobrang haba. Personally, hindi ko naabutan yung kanya naging run, especially in this scene. Sobrang I respect Randy Orton. Despite the fact that I don't like in him in general, still I respect him in general. Kasi he did a lot on pro wrestling. I did a lot. I'm glad na nare-refer nila yung first win niya versus Chris Benoit on SummerSlam 204. I'm glad they're doing that. Without mentioning Chris, I know there's an obvious stuff on this. But still, I'm glad they're doing that without mentioning Chris Benoit. Alright? Then, so, pag-usapan natin ng konti kung ano yung mga favorite Randy Orton moments natin. Kung gusto nyo din makisali sa discussion, pwede nyo din i-chat down sa baba ng ating Discord o kaya sa mga platforms natin sa podcast. I will appreciate the fact na you're going to help me on that. Right? Okay, so let's talk about my favorite Randy Orton moment. Or match. Match mamaya na. The Randy Orton moment that I like was obviously not my best favorite match, but definitely the moment that I liked Randy Orton was yung mga memes sa kanya na puro RKO. That's the Randy Orton moment na gustong gusto ko. But in WWE in general, my favorite Randy Orton moment was he won the heavyweight title at SummerSlam. Personally, that's the moment that I like. Plus, yung kanyang moment with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 21, almost months later. And definitely that's the rise of the Randy Orton. So that's why I love the every second of the Randy Orton run here. Then, favorite Randy Orton match. Hmm, it's kinda hard. Okay, my favorite Randy Orton match na recent was Randy Orton versus, I think it's ano eh. I don't remember. I think AJ Styles, WrestleMania 35. That's a really good match. Then, yung ano naman, all-time ko, Randy Orton. Definitely, yung paborito ko talaga, it's ano eh, Randy Orton versus Mick Foley from Backlash 204. Napanood ko yun on WWE Network. So, if you want to check it out, check it out. That's a really good match, personally. Okay, so let me know your thoughts on Randy Orton on this week's 20 years of Randy Orton. The Orton week continues until next Friday. Probably yes. Oh, then yeah, I think it is. So that's it for my Raw and SmackDown. It's kinda small because of Rebellion. Ang haba kasi ng Rebellion review ko. So, let's talk about NXT now. So, NXT, that's a really good stacked episode of NXT in my point of view. I don't care about the BS here. First thing, let's talk about the history NXT just made on this very episode. There's 24 women na napakita on TV regardless on big or small appearance yung ginawa mo. There's 24 women who appeared in NXT. Huwag kayong magreklamo na dahil ito sa response sila kay Becky, they're proving na they're better women's division rather than AEW. So yeah, I think pwede kong sabihin na tama siya. I think pwede ko rin sabihin ng hindi. There's 50-50 in my head about that statement. So it's kinda 50-50 for me. Then, let's talk about the gauntlet. Let's talk about the women's breakout tournament na mag-start in 2 weeks. So, let's talk about the first announcement here is yung anak ni Santino. So, it's Ariana Grace. So, Ariana Grace will make her WWE debut here on Women's Breakout Tournament. Marami pang in-announce, hindi ko lang tanda yung mga pangalan. Maybe we can discuss that really soon. Pag na-release na lahat ng names and graphics and brackets. Alright? Then, let's talk about the matches on this week's NXT. So, I love Nikita Lyons. Alright? She's very over in NXT. Sobrang over niya in NXT. I'm glad na maraming nanonood ng NXT because of her. Maraming numbers o malaki yung numbers ng NXT. Not the same numbers na we can get from the Black and Gold, but definitely big numbers sa NXT. I'm glad na nakakuha pa nila yung big numbers. Thanks to one of them is definitely Nikita Lyons. So let's thank Diona. Let's thank Nikita Lyons. Let's accept the fact here. We love Nikita Lyons, alright? I love her gimmick. I like her body. Walang libog to, but definitely I like Diona. Mataki ko na sabi si Diona. Shit. I like Nikita Lyons. Man, I fucking love her. Same with Diona here. Sabi ko na nga. But I like Nikita. Seriously. Wala naman siguro may ayaw kay Nikita Lyons here, right? Everyone likes Nikita. Her body, her gimmick, her pinning, yung pag-split niya, nakita-kita yung puwet. Everyone likes that. Let's accept the facts here, alright? Then, okay. Let's talk about Viking Raiders. Viking Raiders just made their NXT returns, alright? They made their NXT returns on this week's NXT. They challenged the Creed Brothers in a match at Spring Breaking. We're going to discuss that a little bit. Then, ano ba? So, we got the story of Tony D'Angelo and Santos Escobar. It's kinda really confusing. Medyo nag-confuse ako on the story kasi hindi ko malaman kung sino ba yung babyface, sino ba yung heel. Pero, I think the clean heels dito is I think it's Tony D. Pero hindi na naman mukhang heels ang Legado. Hindi na sila mukhang heels. Hindi na sila mukhang face. Diba? It's kinda weird for me. But, ano na lang, pabugian na lang, popularan na lang. Ganun. Malalaman natin next week yung mga next decisions on that. Maybe malalaman na rin natin kasi yung clear face, clear heel dito. Or maybe magkaroon ng face turn. Why not? Diba? It's gonna be a plus if they did. No? So, okay. So, let's move on to some segments pa. So, Mandy Rose defeated Roxanne Perez in a match. Basically, sobrang ganda ng run so far ni Roxanne Perez. Pinakikilala niyo siya sa Ring of Honor Roxy. That's a really, really good matchup with Mandy Rose. And I would love to see her soon versus Mandy Rose. But this time for the title. And I would love to kiss their asses. Just to watch this shit. I love this match. Come on, people. Then, okay, so we got Joe Gacy. Joe Gacy really confuses me the most. Man, ano ba yung gimmick mo, pare? Putang ina. Ano ba yung gimmick mo? Kung papasumasa mo sa akin, kung ano ba yung gimmick nito ni Joe Gacy. It's really confusing, man. Ano ka? Ano ba to? Bray Wyatt type of gimmick? It's the Undertaker type of gimmick? Or it's it really irritates me the most, alright? It's kind of confusing. And wala. It's a typical WWE booking. Excuse me. It's kind of confusing talaga. And it's kind of weird. Okay, so yun. I love the feud is really flat. Sobrang flat to feud na to. But that's the last week of Spring Break and build up. So next week is Spring Break-in. So let's talk about the cards and results, predictions. Okay, so Spring Break-in, there's 5 matches plus 1 segment. In-announce yung sit-down interview, sit-down discussion with Tony D and Santos. We don't need to discuss that in the predictions. Okay, let's talk about the predictions now. So Natalia, Nati, and Last Legend versus Cora Jade and Nikita Lyons. Obviously, Last Legend is appearing on NXT UK. UK matters, alright? So I think to write dash off the NXT UK, definitely Nikita and Cora Jade needs to win, and Nati will get her title or match versus Cora Jade soon. Maybe on pay-per-view. Alright? So then let's move on to Grimes and Grimes defending the title versus Solo Sikoa and Carmelo Hayes in a one-on-one triple threat match. One-on-one triple threat match for the NXT North American Championship. I don't think Grimes is dropping the title any soon. So, yeah. Cameron Grimes. Alright. So, Nathan Fraser versus Grayson Waller. It's really, it's really easy. It's a debut match, man. Kaso mukhang ma-end to in a disqualification or Waller maybe getting the victory. So, if you get the win, di na ako magugulat. Okay. Then, so, let's talk about Creed Brothers versus Viking Raiders in a tag team match. Man, obviously Creed's to. If they want to redeem or yung redemption kay Roderick Strong, this is definitely a must win for Creed Brothers. And finally, the main event of Spring Break-in, obviously Braun Breaker, Joe Gacy for the NXT title. Like what I said earlier, sobrang flat ng build-up nitong match na to, but I like the goons on Joe Gacy's side. But it's kind of flat for me, sobrang flat ng build-up nila on this feud. So, let's predict para matapos na to. So, I think Braun Breaker will retain title versus Joe Gacy at NXT Spring Break-in. So, let me know your predictions for this week. Next week's Spring Break-in will be televised on Top Sports and on Top Go if you're watching here in the Philippines. If you're watching on elsewhere, you can find it on channels na alam niyo naman kasi nag-air ng WWE on your respective countries. Like in India, we watch WWE on Sony 1, Sony 10.2, I think it's 3, Sony 10.4, and on Sony Live. In UK, I think it's on BT Sport 1 and 1 HD and anywhere else. Saan kayo nanonood ng WWE. At next day, if paid user ka ng WWE Network, maybe papalabas siya sa WWE Network. So yeah, it's convenient. Since one day after lang sa WWE Network. So yeah. So on the podcast, pagbalik natin after a short break, we're going to discuss Dynamite and of course my picks of the week. But first, let's check our other bunkmates here on Bunk Collective.
Hey everyone, this is Mo Twister, and you're listening to the Kingdom Podcast with the voice DJ Yuki.
That was the OG, Mo Twister, promoting this podcast. If you like Korean pop culture, or know someone who does, then get into it, and visit our Facebook, Twitter and Instagram pages at the Kingdom Pod PH.
We're proud to tell you that this is one of the premier shows to go to for your weekly dose of K-pop. So drop everything and listen to the Kingdom Podcast. Available in all your podcast streaming platforms.
Join us!
A new world has come for the cinematic universe we live in.
Leave your belongings and make sure you're ready to enter in this new world.
This is Cinephiles, a podcast created by two self-proclaimed cinephiles who love talking anything about films.
Catch us every Wednesdays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast. So join us as we enter to the new world of Cinephiles.
Okay. So we're back on the third half of the podcast and final half of the podcast. So yeah, let's plug some shit pa. So yun, ulitin ko na lang Lazada. Again, if you want to support the podcast on your shopping on Lazada, especially this upcoming 5/5 sale, you can use my link on the description below, podlink.co/6gs. Again, malaking tulong yan here on the podcast without no extra cost, alright? Then, ayun, Podmetrics, syempre. If you want to support the podcast on Podmetrics, if you want to start a podcast, syempre, if gusto nyong mag-earn din ng money on your podcast, you can use my referral code on Podmetrics. You can sign up at podmetrics.co/ and you can use my affiliate code or maybe yung referral code ko, that's the MTG Show Pod. Alright, sa Podmetrics. Let's go to Dynamite real quick. So let's start with Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood match. I think this is a really good match. If you're going to watch Dynamite this week, this is definitely a must-watch, man. Sobrang nagugustuhan ko tong laban na to. I was impressed on this matchup. I appreciate the fact that they did this matchup. And sobrang siya, ibang-iba sa mata ko. Ewan ko sa iba kung ano yung masasabi nila about this pairing. It's kinda odd. But yeah, I love this match. Come on. Then, so next, we got the confirmation that Hangman Page will defend the AEW World Championship versus the best in the world, CM Punk, at Double or Nothing pay-per-view on May 29th. Ayan, they confirmed na ito rin ang main event for the pay-per-view. So yeah, we are looking forward for that match. Again, let's talk about Wardlow doing more shit on doing more stuff on AEW, bombing people, power bombing people, just like Lance Archer doing that selling shit Okay, I like that. Pero ano, yung susunod pa dito is probably from Impact. I think we're getting the Impact, New Japan, and AEW stuff like that again. So, I'm glad we're here on that Forbidden Door stuff. So, ayun. I like that. I like that moment. Then, let's move on to Serena Deeb and Hikaru Shida. So, they have a street fight. Yun, street fight. Street fight na lang. Medyo na-uumay na ako sa mga location stereotype matches like that. Na calling. Ayun, I love the Serena Deeb Hikaru Shida match. And I'm glad we got a right winner here. So, yeah, I love Serena Deeb. No doubt about that. Then, so, Undisputed Elite in action. We don't need to talk about that. Then, AEW announced that Deonna Purrazzo will make his AEW debut to unify the to unify the Ring of Honor Women's titles versus Mercedes Martinez in AEW's programming. So, yeah, this is a thing. Hindi nila ginawa to on Impact. So, kind of plus one for me na I'm glad that they did this on AEW TV rather than on Impact TV. So, it's a plus na AEW can get better numbers naman obviously rather than Impact. So, yeah, we got na they did this on Impact or on AEW rather than Impact. No events of Impact though. Then, so finally, Scorpio Sky is once again your AEW TNT champion. He defeated Sammy Guevara for the TNT title, obviously, in a ladder match. So, ano ba ang behind the scenes about this thing? So, we don't know about the behind here, but I think this is kinda obvious dahil medyo foreign object sila Sty Conti and si Sammy Guevara medyo flat. Di naman flat, siguro dahil lang sa real life hit nila. And Tony Khan medyo naiirita siya sa dalawa. So, maybe that's that. Maybe ng reason why they dropped the title to Scorpio. And, ayun. So, we get a foreshadowing here. So, Frankie Kazarian just challenged Scorpio Sky. After of the match-up, he appeared para mag-challenge. And we glad na we got this match-up finally. And I hope na hindi magte-turn ulit tong ATT as heels. Ang weird. I'm okay with them. I'm okay as a face though. I'm okay sa kanila as a face. Alright? So, yun. Din lang. Basically, that's it for my reviews here on the podcast. So, that's a lot. Then, picks of the week. So, man of the week or wrestler of the week, it's Josh Alexander. Well-deserved victory from Rebellion. So, woman of the week is Jade Cargill. I love the match at Rampage. Regardless na hindi siya live. Then, finally, the match of the week. If you're looking for some match-ups from last week. So, that's the triple threat match for the X Division Championship. It's Ace Austin, Trey Miguel, and Mike Bailey for the X Division title at Slammiversary at Rebellion pay-per-view last Sunday. So, that's it for me on this week's episode of the podcast. Before we go to our extra, I want to thank everyone in Bang Collective for welcoming me on their network. That's a really good touch for me na makakasama na ako on their roster. And of course, to my producer, syempre, magpapasalamat ako kay Yuki for everything na tulong mo sa akin so far here on Bang Collective. So, sorry people. Okay, ito na yung problema pag lumalayo ako. So, yeah. Thank you, Yuki, for everything. I'm going to cut this shit, by the way. Okay, thank you, Yux, for the support. And syempre, pag-backup sa akin here on the pod. And sa network, syempre. So, that's it for this week's episode of the podcast. If you want to check everything, TG Show Podcast, syempre, you can check out my linktr. That's linktr.ee/the MTG Show Podcast. So you can follow the podcast on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, and on TikTok at the MTG Show Podcast. You can listen to this episode every week on new episodes as well every Fridays on your favorite podcast platforms and on the podcast app. You can rate the podcast 5 stars, 6 in Tokyo, Japan, Tokyo Dome, kung saan man. You can rate 5 stars on Spotify and on Apple Podcast without no extra cost, alright? Then, for Bonk, of course, me as a member of Bonk, let's promote them. So, let's check nyo yung Facebook, Twitter, and IG ng Bonk Collective. That's at BonkPH. At the BonkPH, rather. Sorry, di pa ako sanay. So, let's check. Pwede nyo i-check yung Bonk Collective on social media at the BonkPH. Maybe malalaman ko, maalis ko din yan soon. And then, you can check out the Bonk Collective website. By the way, it's under maintenance pa. There's something na malalaman nyo soon on Bonk Collective. So, you can check out the website, thebonkph.com. And you can support the podcast by Patreon, of course. Patreon.com/themtgshowpodcast. As low as $1. And syempre sa coffee ko, coffee.com/themtgshowpod. And on Bonk Collective, you can support Bonk Collective as well at coffee.com/thebonkph. Tama? If mali ako, yeah. Again, also you can check other Bonk Collective podcasts on Patreon. Syempre, you can support the Bonk Collective on Patreon. Patreon.com/thebonkph or the Bonk Collective. I'm not sure about the Patreon name since may Patreon din ako. Okay, yun. So, you can check out all of the Bonk Collective roster on, of course, all of the podcast platforms and on their respective podcasts on Bonk Collective. Yeah. And lahat ng na-commercial ko dito sa this week's episode of the Bonk of the podcast. Moving forward, you can check them out on Spotify and the rest of the podcast platforms. On my personal, syempre, you can check me on Facebook, Twitter, IG, etc. at AJ Penera, of course. So, here's the announcement. Moving forward, starting next week, we're going to do a new segment. By the way, tatawagin ko siyang debunked. So, magbigay lang kayo sa akin ng mga myths nyo about pro wrestling. And maybe we're going to do debunks on that. I-debunk natin yan on some episodes of the podcast. Maybe magkakaroon tayo ng fan mail. Maybe magkakaroon tayo ng debunk episodes. Or maybe yung ibang stuff na gusto nyo o yung mga paniniwala nyo na gusto nyo ipa-fix o yung mga sinasabi nyo na believes nyo about pro wrestling, you can chat that down on Debunked really soon. I-start natin yan Debunked next week here on the MTG Show Podcast. Anyways, thank you for listening on this episode. Kung may mga disaster man na kayo naririnig, it's my fault, it's my shitty. By the way, okay, it's time for me to go. Stay safe, stay raso. See you on the next episode on May 9, 2022. Please, wag po tayo boboto ng magnanakaw at ng sinungaling. This is the MTG Show Podcast in cooperation with Bonk Collective. This podcast is sponsored by Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. You can visit podmetrics.co and use my code, the MTG Show Pod.